And my realtor was like, okay, cool. And so he starts looking at it. He's like, hey, this thing's a part of this is actually a portfolio of 26 crack houses. Why don't you buy all 26 crack houses? I was like, what do you mean buy 26 houses? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anybody. At that time, I didn't have a core four. I had one guy who was the agent. I didn't have anyone. And all I knew was the math said, this is a 1.6% rule or rule of thumb. I don't know what I'm doing, but the math says that I should buy it. And in a worst case, I'll sell off 2 or 3 houses to keep everything afloat. So that's how I started. So my very first house I'd ever purchased, no single family home, no primary residence, nothing. I bought 26 tract houses with no preparation, no core four, nothing in place. The math said do it, so I did.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Physicians and Properties. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schloe. Thank you for being with us today for another episode. Today's episode is a little bit different. My buddy Hugh Carnahan is on the podcast, and he is not a physician, but he is about to be married into medicine. His fiancée, Nicole, is a family medicine physician in Missouri, and she's amazing, and Hugh is incredible as well. Hugh and I have been friends for the last 3.5 years, and his story and his journey is just absolutely incredible. He works in the manufacturing space, working on what is called lean and lean concepts for business. And he transformed a lot of businesses in the United States and China through these lean principles about how to really make your business run as efficiently as possible. He took that and retired 15 months after finding out about real estate investing and by using some of these principles. His journey, his start into real estate is incredible. He took imperfect action and bought 26 houses for his first deal. You got to listen to the podcast to hear his story. There was so much tangible and tactical advice about how, if you're a spouse and your partner is a physician, how you can use real estate professional status to offset your income, how you can utilize that, plus investing into different investment vehicles and public service loan forgiveness to pay even less and make it look like you made even less money on paper. This episode will just blow your mind. It was fantastic. And I'm so excited for you to hear this episode with my buddy, Hugh Carnahan. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Today, I have my good friend, Hugh Carnahan, the hillbilly millionaire, on the podcast. Hugh, how are things going?
Things are going fantastic. Alex, thank you for having me on. I've listened to all your podcasts, unless you've released one this week that I probably haven't listened to, but this is exciting stuff. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So super excited to have you on. I know you're not a doctor, but you are getting married to one. And there's a lot of great tips and tricks that folks are going to be able to learn. And honestly, man, you're smarter than a lot of doctors I know. So really great to pick your brain and have you on the podcast. It's going to be awesome.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the kind words. And hopefully today, for the listeners, we can have some real actionable tips towards the end. And at the same time, hopefully we can, if maybe this can be kind of a spouse episode too, as far as, hey, I wish my spouse would learn or know some of the terms. And it's just a different perspective of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're getting married to medicine and, Nicole doing family medicine there is definitely busy. And so you've seen a lot of the things I've stressed about and probably complained about over the last 3 years that we've known each other. And so you've seen it from a different perspective. And I think that it will offer some good insights for the listeners. So thanks again, Hugh. Super glad you're here. And if folks aren't watching the video for this, Hugh has the best mustache. So you got to check it out on YouTube there and take a look at the mustache. But anyways, Hugh, let's get started. Just kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So I'm on average, just like a C student. I did all the things that society told us we were supposed to do, go to school, get good grades. I got D's for diploma, went into the workforce, and at some point woke up and was like, I can't believe this is it indefinitely. There's got to be something else. And so after college, I was an IT guy. So I was working systems and processes, computer systems, that is, and bounced around a bit. My father passed away. And after that, I went into the manufacturing realm because there was a family-run business that he started. And so I went into the family-run business and I acquired a skill set, not as cool as Liam Neeson's skill set, but a skill set, and I started Googling the term how to save failing business. And there's a philosophy popped up called lean, specifically 2-second lean. I adopted that, saved that business, and then applied it to my own life in multiple facets. And then I retired a millionaire and within 15 months of learning about real estate. So that's the short version of everything.
Yeah, right. And a great hook. I love it. Hugh, tell folks just a little bit about 2-second lean, if you don't mind, because I think you have such a unique background in the way that you think about things is just incredible. And we didn't talk about this before, and I should have gave this preface. Are there any 2-second lean principles that you think would be helpful for doctors who are kind of struggling with clinic, or ways or tips or tricks that you think they can use 2-second lean to make themselves more efficient?
Oh, 100%, actually 10,000%. So there's a little known fact, 2-second lean companies become so well run. What'll end up happening is some medical system will kill a family member of an entrepreneur that's running a business for 2-second lean. The company is basically already running itself at that point, and they'll dedicate the rest of their life to trying to help the hospital system out that killed their family member. That's happened multiple times, including the system in town that killed my father due to negligence. So real short, lean is the science of efficiency, efficient process, getting the most with the least resources, with the least time. A lot of it comes down to cycle times. It's not buying more equipment, although that can be the case, or new equipment. It's more thinking through what you have. And so much of what humans are taught is to batch things, and batching literally kills people. Stoplights are batches. There's tons of things that kill people. And basically 2-second lean breaks everything down. Everything that humans do, everything that anyone does is either value added or non-value added. If you can recognize that, everything that's non-value added will be broken down into 8 basically wastes. Those 8 wastes, once you can see what those are, humans are incredible creative problem solvers. So they're going to be able to come up with the things. It's, can you see the waste or not? And that's the base underlying thing. So you're going to see a lot of crazy trauma hospitals that do what's called motion studies. Some of the best hospitals in the world, probably overseas, use those skills. If you see, color coding in a lot of hospitals today, strong visual controls, that has its roots in the manufacturing background and everything like that. So for those of you guys that don't know, and I'll get off this real quick, the last bit is manufacturers, I like to call, and there's tons of the smartest people I know, but I like to call us we're competing on extremely thin margins, and we're taking like $10 million of raw material, spending $2 million of labor, and hopefully we're coming out with a $14 million product and don't have defects, and then trying to ship it across the world. We're some of the dumbest business people out there just by the space. So the systems that we designed prevent us from going bankrupt. When applied to real estate or really any other business, allow you to dominate the business. So I'm successful, but it's not because I'm smart. I'm successful because I'm following very, very simple fundamental practices, and you guys can too. You guys are way smarter than I am. So,
well, you're really humble. You're one of the smartest people I know, Hugh, and I genuinely mean that. I think a lot of docs listening here are thinking through all the waste that happens in the clinic and in the hospital. And I've even thought about it all the time after some discussions that we've had of simple things, just like, hey, not using the trackpad on the laptop and using an actual mouse, and having 2 screens, and just simple things that make things a lot more efficient that folks can do that will just improve processes on the way. And so, yeah, I think it's incredible what you've done. I think you have a future in 2-second lean medical if you ever want to go down that route as well.
And I do have some tips that might help individual clinics or DPC folks that are actionable towards the end, that are very, very simple stuff. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's the simple stuff that gets you.
Yeah, it's true.
Smart people refuse to believe how simple it is. And
yeah, well, I mean, I think the other thing that sometimes goes amiss is when you're doing something that's wasting time 20 times per day, 30 times per day, you almost lose sight of like, hey, that was only 30 seconds that wasteful thing happened, but 30 seconds times 20 is 10 minutes. And it just all adds up. And I think folks miss that sometimes. So we could definitely talk about 2-second lean for the entire podcast, but I think it's great to think through things on, hey, is this value add or not value added? And you do a great job at doing that all throughout all walks of life. So yeah, it will definitely hit those actionable steps at the end. Hugh, you have an incredible journey into real estate, and definitely are all about taking action, whether that be imperfect or perfect action. Do you mind telling folks a little bit about your transition from W-2 into real estate investing and what that looked like?
Yeah. So It all started with solar panels. I didn't know anything about investing, and my fancy idea was I sold a bunch of stock that I had in a company. I had forgotten that I had a limit order placed, and I woke up one day and I had $221,000 in my bank account, and that was just from 8 years of saving with the company and employee stock purchase plans and some aggressive stuff like that. I didn't know any better, but I was probably at a 50% savings rate coming out of college, and I just tried to stay there. I don't know why, didn't know what I was going to do with it. Woke up one day, had that money, and I thought, okay, well, the secret to life is have low expenses, right? A lot of doctors are paycheck to paycheck. That's not because they don't make enough money. It's because their expenses are too high. So I thought, man, if I could get rid of my electricity bill, that'd be great. I started looking into buying solar panels. And by that time I was in manufacturing. I was very good at bidding out contractors and sourcing parts and labor and that kind of stuff. So I was bidding 4 or 5 solar panel companies against each other. One guy I really liked, he would have gotten the job, but it turned out that just because of whatever reason, I wasn't allowed to put as much solar as I needed on my house. And I talked to him and I said, hey, James, if this were your money, what would you do with it? And he said, I would not buy my solar panels. I would buy real estate and I use that to pay for your electricity. And I was like, that's a very odd thing for a solar panel guy to tell me. Well, it turns out he was the owner and he was a terrible salesman. And we joke that he did go out of business a few months after that. But the long and short of it was we had a conversation and he said, hey, go to YouTube, type in the word BRRR, BRRRR, and Bigger Pockets, and just watch that episode. And I was like, okay, well, there's a very smart guy. He's telling me not to buy his thing, to do this other thing. Real estate sounded spooky. It sounded like, oh, other people do that. I could never do that. I said, okay, cool. So I watched the BRRR episode for Bigger Pockets. It was Brandon Turner, David Green. They were talking about it, made it so simple. And then I think the solar panel guy also was like, yeah, just start episode 1 of Bigger Pockets and listen until you get caught up. And so I think that was September. No, that was August. So I spent August 1st. And by September 1st, I had caught up to 300 episodes. I listened to at 2x speed because I didn't know about 3x speed at the time. I listened at 2x speed for 2 hours a night. And then on weekends, I'd listen for 4 hours. And I had enough data at the end of that where I was like, it was just normal people with normal stories. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I formed an LLC September 18th. I started making offers. Why? Because they said make offers, right? Hey, learn to do things, make offers. You're going to get all these rejections. Just do it. December 31st. Here's how I got my first house. I made an offer on a property. It was effectively turnkey. A flipper had gone in, flipped it. They wanted, I think it was like 57 grand or something. And I lost out or offered 57 grand. And I lost that one. I was looking at another property. And when I was looking at the property, I was running so many numbers and I saw so many deals. I was looking at a property. My realtor was walking backwards and he tripped over a crack in the sidewalk. And when he tripped over the crack in the sidewalk, there was a for sale sign next to that. I looked at the for sale sign. I looked at the house and it was a very distinct house that was falling apart. And I said, I've seen this on the MLS before or Zillow or whatever. And so I'm like, yeah, find out what that thing's selling for. I don't know. And my realtor was like, okay, cool. And so he starts looking at it. He's like, hey, this is actually a portfolio of 26 crack houses. Why don't you buy all 26 crack houses? And I was like, what? You mean buy 26 houses? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anybody. At that time, I didn't have a core 4. I had one guy who was the agent. I didn't have anyone. And all I knew was the math said, this is a 1.6% rule or rule of thumb. I don't know what I'm doing, but the math says that I should buy it. And in a worst case, I'll sell off 2 or 3 houses to keep everything afloat. So that's how I started. So my very first house I'd ever purchased, no single family home, no primary residence, nothing. I bought 26 track houses with no preparation, no core 4, nothing in place. The math said do it, so I did.
That's awesome, Hugh. I love that story because the information's out there. Like you said, all the Bigger Pockets episodes are out there. But the implementation or the action is what always holds folks up. And instead of just buying one house, luckily you didn't buy the $57,000 house and lost out on that. You bought 26 crack houses, which is amazing. How'd that go? You didn't have the core 4, which is typically realtor, contractor, lender, and I'm missing one. You didn't have the core 4. and we're able to get it done. So how'd that end up for you?
Oh, well, I'm currently a 2.5 millionaire. And for the last 3 years, I've done what I want with who I want, when I want. So pretty good, I'm going to say. My worst case right now, I've been lean fired. I'm in a constant scaling state. So it gets uncomfortable at times. But at a worst case, I sell off a large chunk of my portfolio. I have no debt. And, I have to figure out how to live off of like 10 or 20 grand a month forever. And this is allegedly the least money I'll ever make for the rest of my life. So I think pretty good. Yeah. But
well, we'll just end the episode there. And that's awesome. Yeah, man. It's been so cool to see your journey. And I
don't do's that I learned. Don't do what I did.
No, 25 crack houses for the first deal. Not recommended.
Yeah, I'd say there's you can get there pretty dang quickly. Now, I say I had zero real estate experience, but at that time I was running a $26 million operation between China and the United States, running 350 employees. I was very used to managing that. When you listen to the Bigger Pocket stuff, they talk about the core four. It's like, okay, well, I only have to manage 4 people. And from my lean background at that point, I was like, well, I don't really need the other guys until I have something. So I just need to find the agent right now, find a deal. And I was just practicing. And then I believe in Seneca's definition of luck, which is luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So when this opportunity popped up, I said, all right, I'm going to jump on it right now. And I bought them December 30th, 2019. And then COVID immediately happened, which was stressful.
Yeah,
the world changed quite drastically. We didn't know what was going to happen. So starting out, here was the crazy thing. So first, the other thing I didn't say is my limit order I placed, I had $221,000, but I actually owed taxes on that. So I really only had like $180,000 or something, but I had time to figure it out. So what I did was not pay taxes, go to a family member, borrow an extra 50 grand because I didn't have any other money, go all in and buy these properties and really figure it out. I had no reserves. But what told me to buy it is my debt service ratio, which sounds spooky. It just means my loan paid me X amount. And then I owed the loan X amount and I was getting X amount from the properties, Y amount from the properties, was the 1.6% rule. And so I was making 1.6, the cost of it. I think I was pulling in 15 grand a month at the time. And I think my debt service at the time was like 7 grand or something, or 6 grand. So, and I had 5 vacancies. And so I felt like at a worst case scenario, I can break even while I figure everything out. And that's the math said to do it. So I did. And I knew I didn't know what to do. And I knew it was okay that I didn't know what to do, because I just listened to like 340 episodes of normal people being like, yeah, I was a teacher and, I got fired and my wife had twins and now I'm a millionaire because of real estate. And someone was like, oh, I had a, fashion degree and I was a waitress and now I'm a millionaire because of real estate. And I was like, okay, well, it's very repeatable. I'm just going to do what they did. So
you bring up a great point too. I think that oftentimes folks think they have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to investing in real estate. And really, you don't, so many people have gone before you and done the same exact thing. So just find someone who's done it and done it well and just copy what they did.
Well, and your listeners too are probably going to be in full-time career mode and they don't have to do what I did, right? In fact, specifically for your listeners, I'd recommend not doing what I did unless you're part-time or like what I did was I made an asymmetric bet that said, I'm going to force appreciation. Right. It was like I think they wanted 1.5 million. And I talked them down to 1.11261 and like 27 cents or something to buy the properties. But I think they were worth 2 million or 2.5 million the whole time. So I bought distressed properties to fix them up, but I could do that in my spare time. If you're a full-time physician, there's probably the breathing room to just buy a turnkey thing. Like it's very repeatable. It's get rich slow. When you look back 10 years from now, you're going to seem like the smartest person in the world. But when you're in it, you're like, oh, that was very, very simple and straightforward. So you don't have to get fancy with anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you really desire to get fancy with anything or buy the crack houses, then partner with somebody who's going to be the boots on the ground doing the work. And maybe you just are the capital partner.
Right. The first time you do it, that's a great way to learn. I definitely wouldn't recommend doing the swinging the hammer yourself. I educate a lot of people all the time, especially business owners, and you don't have to be the person that swings the hammer, right? If you can spend an hour of your time and have a higher dollar value, right? If you're a physician and you can moonlight an extra 15 hours a week or something like that, for some reason, I don't know why you would, and you generate a high income to then turn around and pay someone else to swing the hammer, do that. There's no physical need. The reason I did what I did is because I didn't have another way to generate income. And I made an asymmetric bet, and my skill was managing people and systems and processes. So I just trusted my skill set. Only do that if you want to do that. There's nothing wrong with doing it. But so many people, they're freaked out because they don't know what they don't know. Once you get to the point where you know what you don't know, then it's easy. So just get enough information. By the time if you start here's actionable step number 1. Go to Bigger Pockets episode 1, Real Estate Podcast, which is great because it was like 2012. So like they had just come out of the Great Recession. All the early interviews were like scary times still. And they interviewed only people who made it and people who didn't make it and why. So start there and listen to episode like 300, and you're going to have enough information that you know what you don't know. And you're going to know your own strengths and how that fits into that, and easily be able to go start wherever you're at on earth, right? Doesn't matter if you're the US or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Bigger Pockets, such a great resource. Yeah, it's awesome. So after the initial 26 houses, what did the next steps in the journey look like? What's the portfolio look like now?
I think at one point I was up to 287 doors. Maybe it swelled to 300. At this point, basically in July of 2022, interest rates flipped. And so we started selling off assets that weren't performing well. I just went into like a stabilizing mode. So it's funny. People are like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't buy right now. The market's so bad. Well, then the same people wouldn't buy back then because the market's so hot. There is no right or wrong time to buy in real estate. At any point in time, you can buy and have a great deal because real estate is a 3-legged stool when you come to debt. You can have the price, you can have the term, and then you can have the interest rate. People are freaking out about the interest rate. It's like, okay, I'll pay whatever interest rate, but that means the price has to come down. And you can make a lot of creative deals happen now as well. And actually, I invest about $2 million of a physician right now, and they're just ignoring. They're just doing their physician job all day, and it's working out pretty well for them. So I think they have they own 2 apartment complexes that they ignore.
That's awesome. So if you want to own 2 apartment complexes that you ignore, reach out to Hugh. And go for it. It's awesome, man. Well, you are going to be married to medicine soon with Nicole, who's a family med doc. And let's talk a little bit about what that's going to look like for Nicole and rep status, and maybe some ways that folks are listening to this and they're like, hey, my spouse is not medical. What are some ways that they can get involved in real estate or help out the family financial situation?
100%. And this is the part you want to listen to if you're a spouse. If you don't have real estate professional status as a spouse to someone married in medicine, then you don't truly love your spouse. No, I'm just kidding. But that's a complete exaggeration. But on a serious note, it is so obscenely helpful. It mathematically and emotionally does not make sense for you not to get it, right? You could be a photographer and you could just take photography photos of real estate or something. You could be a real estate agent, whatever your day job is. In fact, I try to convince a friend of mine's husband, who's a web guy. I'm like, dude, just do real estate web design on the side and claim that, the status. And there's some legalities to it. So make sure you do everything properly. When you have doctor or any high income earner plus real estate professional status, and you have the doctor or your listeners are probably engaging in buying real estate, it is unreasonable, absolutely unreasonable, how quickly you can eradicate your debt. And I'll tell you my plans or our plans here in a little bit. My plans on how I plan to scale my portfolio. When Nicole and I get married, how we're going to scale our portfolio. And then probably it'll evolve into some kind of DPC clinic for her. And there's just so much that can be done that it's incredible. So, I mean, I know you want to keep this part a little brief, but where do you want me to start with it?
Well, first off, let's just kind of hit a broad overview on what REPS is, a real estate professional status. And if you don't mind, and again, Hugh's not an attorney, So talk to your attorney in regards to the legalities of it. But if you don't mind just kind of hitting like, what does that look like to get rep status and what are some of the benefits? I think that'd be really helpful.
Yes. So, and also the terms or whatever could have changed by the time you listen to this, if this is 10 years from now or something. But it's that you have to have over half your working year needs to be hours spent doing real estate, and your income, I believe, needs to come from real estate as well. I think those are the two major requirements. So if you are, people hear the time one and they're like, oh, I got that one. And then they don't account for the income section. And then I think there's a gray area. Again, talk to an attorney and a CPA. But here's the unfair advantage. And I believe in all of us have our own unfair advantages. And here's why I think it's so, so powerful. And we can use you as an example. Let's say your spouse got real estate professional status. You guys are continuously investing in these large assisted living facilities. Well, real estate professional status has an unfair advantage of multiple things. And it is that you get to take your active income. If one spouse is married and you do married filing jointly, and one of them is real estate professional status, you get to write off your passive losses against your active income. So for instance, myself and two partners own a hotel, unfortunately. And we did a cost segregation and we had a $660,000 loss that we get to carry forward. That means I got to carry forward a $220,000 loss. If I had a spouse that's making $200,000, we just, for the year, went negative $20,000 because of that. Now, that'll be recaptured, 1031, whatever. We'll have to play those games later. But if you have $2 million of real estate, $3 million, $5 million, $20 million one day, you get to count the depreciation against your active income for the year. And that's the number one thing. Now, and this is why, and Alex, you don't have any student loans, right?
No, I don't. Military paid for those. Yeah.
If you are a physician and you have student loans, then you can do some crazy stuff, right? So if you have PSLF, Public Loan Forgiveness Program, and you're married to someone who is a real estate professional status, and you have real estate, then you get to write off your depreciation against your income. And so hopefully you're doing the game where you're dumping into your 403B, that's 22 grand or something this year, and your 457B, that's another 22 grand. So now you just dropped it. You're let's say it's $200,000. So now you're 200 minus 44, $156,000. Then you have $2-3 million worth of real estate and you offset it even more. Well, if you're on PSLF, you're paying your debt service based on your percentage of your income. And now you're doing you're lowering your income on paper with your contributions and the depreciation. And so you're paying 10% of what your income is, married filing jointly, offsetting all of that. Then you do that for 10 years. And then at the end of the 10 years, your debt's forgiven. And unlike other loan forgiveness, there is no prepayment penalty or the penalty as income. And you still have all your real estate and your properties and all that stuff. And it's insane. It's literally insane. So another real estate professional status, maybe you do Airbnb stuff. If you're an Airbnb host or co-host, that's another way to say, oh, I take pictures of this. I set this up. I mean, the avenues are endless. And especially if, so many physicians I've ever talked to are so frustrated about their work. And your podcast is one of the few I've ever heard where they get that break and that relief of saying, you know what? I actually have enough real estate to offset everything. I can go part-time. And I think offsetting your income, if you're DPC and you have a real estate professional status, your little clinic might be making $2-3 million a year. But now your real estate can help offset some of that. And I think it's a really huge power couple thing that you guys can absolutely use to your advantage. And we plan to use everything that we possibly can. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, folks, if go back, rewind, listen to the last 5-7 minutes of that, because that's going to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars that then you can therefore invest in other assets and just continue to set your family up for success. That was great. It sounds like that's kind of your plan with Nicole. Any other tips, tricks? What are you guys thinking in terms of setting yourselves up from that perspective, the marriage and so forth?
Yeah, from the physicians and the real estate side, that's pretty much it. So the short version, here's the 30-second magic clip you can have, is we're going to contribute, max out the 403B, max out the 457B, drop the taxable income as low as we can. I'll take depreciation because I think I control $6 million worth of real estate, something like that. I'm a $2.5 millionaire on paper. I have about $4 million worth of debt. So all my expenses get to count against my income. So I actually go negative often because I'm in a scaling state. And then that's going against her active income. And then she's registering for PSLF. And she's like 4 years into that already because of COVID and residency. And so we're going to pay very little. If there becomes an event where she needs to leave for whatever reason, she can draw down her 457B. If she makes too much or I make too much one year, then we'll figure out other real estate specific things. But we could do a cost segregation against an apartment complex. I mean, we could go buy another apartment complex if we're making too much that year. There's really, when you do it right, and it sounds overwhelming to a lot of people who might be hearing this for the first time, it's super straightforward. You can basically offset your real estate stuff against your active income. And it's such an unfair advantage, and it's awesome. And we should absolutely take advantage of it when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great strategy. I mean, it's how the rich are paying their money in taxes. And so it's a fantastic way to do that. That's awesome, Hugh. I mean, just such tactical and tangible advice that's really going to change a lot of lives of folks that are listening to this. Super cool stuff, man. Well, you're working on some other really cool things coming up in the future and now. What are you working on? Tell us a little bit about Small Biz Rescue, because super excited for you with that.
Yeah. So I have a podcast that may or may not be released by the time you guys hear this episode. If not, you can check back and it will be. Small Biz Rescue is kind of how it started. Is really my background is business, and I'm an expert at operations. And that lent me to be really, really good at real estate, because real estate realistically is an extremely sloppy, lazy industry. There's so many people that are just horrible at their jobs and they're just making money hand over fist. And if you are a doctor, a physician, whatever, and you're listening to this right now, there's a 100% possibility that you will be able to make tons of money in real estate doing it very passively. But what I find out, and probably more of the people running clinics, is just because you're a good baker doesn't mean you know how to run a bakery. I can step into any bakery in the world and I will run the crap out of it. And it's because the fundamentals, the widgets that you make or the service you provide does not matter, because the struggles we have as companies are the same. Just like every physician I've ever talked to and you've ever talked to can relate almost instantly to the same struggles. Oh, the computer system crashed, or this patient shoved this thing here. Can you believe that? Okay, it doesn't matter what country you're in, you speak the same language, you're unified by the same horrible experiences. And when it comes to running businesses, everyone has the same problems, right? So I'll give you an example of, there's a physician clinic that turned me away from working with them. And I'm not going to try to be too rude, but they're not very smart. They turned me away because they're like, oh, you've never worked with physicians, so you don't know what's going on. Their intake staff at the front desk was losing like 30% just because they didn't capture insurance properly. Like 30% of where they could just capture insurance. They were blowing through their MAs and blowing through their front desk staff, and they had a revolving door, and they had almost no systems and processes for checking in. So it was upsetting everybody. So they had terrible reviews online. And it just came down to, if they just increased, it was a neurology clinic. If they just increased the capture to make sure that they actually captured the information and they didn't fat finger something when they were in, while they were checking people in, then that right there would have made them like 10 or $20 million more over the course of the year. That is a very, very simple example of, it's the little things that get you. It's not the big things. They're over there as a business manager, as an operations manager, trying to push the physicians to see more patients and do more this and do more that. And there is an alternate, and no one explores the alternate. The alternate is, you can have higher profit margins by running your ship better. When you're bleeding out, right? There's Paul Akers told to me, this is one of my mentors. He said, your wealth is in your waste. There's especially in the medical field. Medical might be sloppier than real estate, which is shocking to me because real estate is terrible. But there's millions and millions and millions of dollars just sitting, stacks of money everywhere around you, that if you just were slightly paying attention, you could recapture that as an organization. It's simple stuff like, sometimes you have to pay a little bit more to get a little bit less. The physicians listening, they might be frustrated because they're like, well, I work as a part of a system and the system dictates X, Y, Z. So it'll never happen for me. That may be true, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn. You have some say over your area, right? I mean, just checking people in, rotating things. I can't remember. I think there was the shooting in Vegas with the country singers a few years ago. And there was a SWAT team trained physician who took command and control and did it's really fascinating read of how they did rapid incident response. And they were basically able to save so many more people due to just good process. And it was nothing different, same staff, everyone's burnt out, everyone's freaking out. You're on high alert, right? Allegedly white residency is still a thing. All those things were happening. And it was good process that separated that hospital from all the other hospitals around that weren't doing that. And it's absolutely plausible. Strong visual controls are one. You can set up a system with Kanbans. Alex, have you ever run into a situation where you're treating a patient and you don't have a widget?
Oh yeah.
And what happens?
Yep. I got to leave the room and go get whatever it is and, waste a couple minutes, pull my CAT card out to the computer, log back in, waste 5 more minutes trying to get logged back into the computer. Next thing you know, you're behind.
Right. And if you do that for 2 or 3 patients, all of a sudden, boom, now you've spent 15 minutes of your 15-minute appointment, right? Because you don't have an hour appointment for some reason. And now you're way behind. But then that compounds over every single physician at the place. A lot of the times they'll have run out of something and then you've got to reorder it. So you got to send that patient away or they have to come back, which is just compounding the scheduling issue. And then you turn around and you do that. Well, there's a simple system called Kanban. Toyota invented it in the 70s. And it basically allows you to never run out of things. If you set it up properly, you will rarely run out of things. And you'll always have what you need, exactly what you need on hand when you need it. And there's very easy replenishment that you can replenish each individual room with this system. And the system is like physical little cards that are printed, like a note card, like a sticky note. Hey, you have a red sticky note. Hey, you have a blue sticky note. That right there is good enough to save hundreds of millions of dollars for a clinic. But it's the little stuff that people don't think about. It's not intuitive. It's counterintuitive. And that's why people don't slow down. Sometimes you got to slow down to think before you can speed up.
Yeah. No, that's so true, Hugh. I think about it all the time, and I've pitched this multiple times, and the other primary care docs who are listening to this are going to be like, preach. If our appointments, instead of being 15 to 20 minutes, were 40 minutes, I guarantee you patient satisfaction would be higher, patient care would be better, and access to us would improve. Instead of wasting, 15 minutes of the appointment, bringing the patient back, having them fill out paperwork they filled out every time that is unchanged, having them fill out this paperwork every time, ask them the same check-in questions that you ask them every time that are largely unchanged, and wasting 15 minutes of the 20-minute appointment doing that, and then leaving 5 minutes with me to try and solve all their issues that ultimately leads to, hey, I'm sorry, we don't have enough time for this. You're going to have to reschedule another 1 to 2 appointments to take care of these other couple problems. We could get all of that done in one 40-minute appointment, do 3 times as much in half the time, and improve access. I've been preaching that since I've been here, and everyone looks at me like, no, it doesn't make any sense. You're doubling the appointment time. Yes, I'm doubling the appointment time, but I'm tripling or quadrupling the amount of work that's done in that time frame and eliminating 1 to 2 more appointments just by doing it.
100%, 100%. And, it's crazy because I remember one of your earlier episodes, you were talking about there was an overweight lady, and you happened to have the person after them cancel, and you knew there was a clear. So you just stayed, you talked to them and were like, yo, do you work out? And they're like, no, I don't work out. And you're like, well, go for some walks, watch some TV on commercial breaks, like do some exercise. And then she lost 100 pounds or something. And then she got her mom losing weight. Okay. So now you've impacted another person and another physician that has to treat her mom. I'm sure way less, way healthier in general. Just because there's some basic preventative stuff.
Yeah. I had the time to do that I would not have had that patient not canceled. And that extra time completely changed the life of this patient, got her off all her diabetes medication, her hypertensive medications. She lost 125 pounds. Now she's running 5Ks and she wants to run a half.
That's crazy.
This was a lady who never exercised at all, And so that's what medicine's about. That's what the focus should be. That's what primary care should be. If we really value preventative medicine, if we really value that, we're going to change lives like that and improve the health of the nation. I got to be careful. I'm about to get on my soapbox, but yeah, it's just so interesting, and I think we get a lot of non-physician folks who are trying to control things and administrators who are meddling in things. And I think physicians have a hard time being able to, or in a position to speak up and really advocate for their patients. So hopefully that'll change in the future. Hopefully the folks listening to this 10 years from now, it's a different environment. But yeah, anyways, I can get really fired up about this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in short, so Small Biz Rescue, the company I own and operate, we are an education company. 85% of what we give away is free, and we basically will sell our time. But let me ask you this. What if you had an extra half hour every hour? I'm serious.
Please.
What if you had an extra half hour every hour? That's what we do. We have to do it in manufacturing because manufacturing has such horribly slim margins that you will go bankrupt. No debt, been around for 80 years. You'll go bankrupt if you make a mistake for like 2 or 3 months in a row. When you're artificially propped up with medicine, healthcare, all this stuff, you can be very, very sloppy. So it's those skill sets. So it's just tons of very, very base level fundamentals that are applied to process. It starts with, can you see value? Is it value added or non-value added? If it's non-value added, is it a part of the 8 wastes? It will be a part of the 8 wastes. Once you can see the 8 wastes, you're going to come up with a solution to solve it. That's like half the equation. The other half is I put a framework in that my whole organization independently thinks on its own forever, indefinitely. It gives all the team members the power and the charge to be able to change their environment. And people are like, oh, well, we have HIPAA and all this stuff. It's like, no. Yes, you have HIPAA, but you can put a blue sticker on this thing on the door. That's fine. That's the kind of level changes that we're talking about, where they make their own lives easier. And suddenly you're cross-communicating. I mean, it is a extremely fast change when you implement it properly. And I normally say there's millions of dollars to be made. There's millions in your waste. When you check the medical facilities, like a small medical facility, you're talking billions a month that you can change. Easy. And just keep it in your pocket. So if you're a hospital administrator right now listening to this, why don't we fatten your paycheck by making everyone's job easier? Because I've got the answer to that. And they're very old, and I'm copying much smarter billion-dollar organizations that came up with everything, like Toyota and some other awesome ones.
Yeah. Well, not only are you saving millions, billions of dollars, you're improving patient outcomes and you're improving patient care. And that's what it's all about. And you're doing it more efficiently. Right. So everyone's happier, the doctors, the patients, et cetera. Yeah. Well, man, I hope that Nicole starts a direct primary care practice, because that will be the most lean, efficient, just incredible practice that exists. And then will no doubt be a model for a lot of other ones. So I'm really excited.
It's super cool too, because she's doing an integrative medicine fellowship. And I didn't know what that is. That sounds like a fancy term, but I'm learning it's basically all the weird hippie stuff that people do. But they're actually, this one's baloney. Don't do it. This one's real. But then there's the actual science and the medical stuff. So she's like, oh, when you take fish oil, this and that. So it's actually the science behind it, but it's all preventative stuff. So if you can stop the bleeding from preventative side when you have a healthier population in general, then you make that their responsibility, right? The patient will probably feel better. They'll come in less. And I'm sure there's certain entities that don't want that to happen. But instead of being reactionary, you're being proactive. I think that's super, super cool, because just like the gal that you help who's now running and doing 5Ks, and they're off all of their other meds, like that quality of life and the person that you've made on their life, the impact you've made. And then all the people that goodness gets to trickle out into that person ever interacts with is all because you happen to have an extra half hour once. The butterfly effect is crazy there.
Right. Yeah. And imagine if that was the norm, And yeah, I completely agree. We've turned into such a reactive medical culture that really, healthcare in America, this is Dr. Schloe's opinion, not the views of the DoD or the United States Air Force. The healthcare in America, if we don't pivot more towards preventative medicine and continue to be reactionary, we're in for a big world of hurt. And there's a great book. It's called Outlive by Peter Attia. He's a physician. He was an oncologist and a surgeon. And basically that's the whole premise of his book, is like, hey, if we just are preventative, if we just implement the things that we know will make people healthier and live longer, we're going to save downstream all these money and improve the outcomes of the nation as a whole. And really that's what it boils down to. Prevention should be the most important thing. We're a great country when it comes to reactive medicine. We're a great country when it comes to like specialized surgeries and all these other things. Prevention, we're terrible at. Primary care, we're terrible at because we don't value it as a nation, and we really, really, really need to. So I really hope the pivot happens. And I think that direct primary care is a great opportunity to do that. And I think that a lot of medical practitioners pivot towards that, hopefully in the future, because it really just benefits patients so much. And really, that is what it's all about, is taking good care of patients. So everything else is got to fall to the wayside. We got to focus on the patient. And
And absolutely. I mean, just baseline education. You shouldn't eat these things because they're bad for you. But here's what's happening when you do. That just the very, very simple stuff. I don't know why. I'm actually shocked that insurance companies don't eat it up. Insurance companies should be the number one let's do preventative stuff, because it means they're gonna pay billions and billions of dollars less and keep all that in their pocket because they're not paying for dumb stuff, right? So that's a whole nother beast. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's interesting. And this was an awesome conversation, and I want to be respectful of your time. Are there any parting shots, any closing thoughts that you have for the audience? If you do run a clinic or PCP or something like that, just some actionable steps, or your home office, if you're just a normal physician, have 2 monitors. It increases your accuracy by 80%, 60 to 80%, meaning that you're less likely to accidentally type something in wrong, which then can just completely, you guys could actually kill people. So don't do that, please. But from an administrator standpoint, just increasing the accuracy, preventing one defect from occurring could save you hours, which translates to, Dr. Schloe didn't see 15 patients because of this defect. And the other thing is very simple, use a mouse instead of a trackpad. Just get a mouse instead of a trackpad. It increases speed and efficiency by it quadruples it, and accuracy again. So just the very, very simple things. For the real estate side, just take imperfect action. Just start somewhere. You don't have to be as brazen as I was. I'd suggest against it, especially given y'all's probable workload. Just start, right? Just make an offer. If you haven't made an offer, just make an offer. If you haven't run the numbers, just start running 5 or 6 numbers. If you haven't found a realtor, go to a local real estate meetup, have a glass of wine or some beers or something, find somebody that's a real estate friendly agent, real estate investor friendly agent, and just start making offers. I have a very simple, I train new investors all the time. I run the local Pints and Properties meetup. So I've trained and helped 20 or 30 investors get started. Just start. Just take one down and start. You're going to learn more going through the process once. And it's going to be bad, probably. I hope it goes bad. I hope it goes wrong, because you're going to learn more fixing all the wrong things. Then do it again. By the second one, you're going to be like, okay, I get it. Here's what to look out for. And guess what? It's going to be clunky. It's not going to be as bad as the first time, but it's going to be clunky. By the third time, you're going to be an old hat at it. You're going to be like, okay, whatever. And then by the third property, whether it's a crack house, whether it's turnkey, whether it's an apartment complex, by the third time you've done that thing, you have a pretty good understanding of it. And again, with real estate, it's very hard to go wrong. It's very hard to lose. If you run the numbers properly, it's very hard to lose. So just start. Just take imperfect action, get started. And if you have not listened to Bigger Pockets, go to episode 1 and listen to episode. It goes by very quickly. You can do it in a month. I did it in a month. So
that's perfect advice, Hugh. I love it. And I would also say go to episode 1 of Physicians and Properties.
That's
and
right.
Listen all the way through too. And leave a 5-star rating and review if you don't mind as well, if you learned something from this episode. That's awesome. Well, Hugh, where can folks reach out to you? If they
You can find out more at hughcarnahan.com. I have 2 podcasts that are coming out. One's called FU Money, and the other one, it's about money and finance. And then the other one is Small Biz Rescue. And that's about running businesses. And there's a lot of real estate stuff in there as well. Oh,
awesome. We'll be sure to
bonus actionable step for DPCs specifically. And what got me thinking about this was whoever you had on, and they were talking the shortest lease possible.
Yeah, Leah Gupta.
I'm going to challenge you guys as a DPC. Maybe you don't do it outright. I'm going to suggest you do, because you can totally do it. Is what's called business hacking. It's exactly like house hacking, if you know what that is. But what you do is you raise an SBA loan and you buy a strip mall, or you get some partners together. You go buy a strip mall or whatever, a commercial loan, commercial facility, right? The SBA is giving 90% of the loans. You only got to raise 10%. So let's say it's $1 million strip mall, right? It's $100,000. Let's say it's a $10 million strip mall. It's $1 million. You then just have your office in one of those and the rest of the offices pay you rent. And then when your practice expands, rather than figuring, you're the landlord, when your practice, keep everybody on a 3 to 5 year lease. We'll talk leases a different time. But as your practice grows, you can expand slowly into the other units that you have. Now, you just eliminated your risk. Dr. Gupta said, get the shortest possible lease you can. The reason she said that was to mitigate risk. I'm going to say lean into the risk even better. Buy a strip mall to have your practice in. People will say, oh, why do you want the strip mall? Oh, because I'm going to put my doctor practice in it. Okay, a bank's going to throw money at you immediately. Then you're mitigating your risk because you have other people paying you on top of your patients paying you. Okay, let's flash forward 5 years. You're all successful at this point. Go buy another building across town or in a different state or whatever it is. Just keep doing that. Business hack. Doesn't matter how big your TPC gets, you will probably make more money owning the ground and real estate under there. And you had to pay rent to somebody anyways. So why not pay yourself? That is my bonus tip and a personal plan that we have. And that's exactly how we're going to expand if and when we do a DPC ourselves.
That was good, Hugh. Oh, man. Yeah,
Woo!
Good stuff. I'm going to be doing the same thing if I go down the DPC route because it's the way to do it. Plus, you get all the real estate benefits that we already talked about earlier.
Second bonus tip, get your spouse to agree, beg, borrow, or whatever, bribe them if you have to. Get them to have real estate professional status because if you do the DCP and the business hacking that I just said, you're going to write off all of that commercial real estate against your active income, against all the rent, all the whatever, against your businesses. It's a powerful thing. So you're just stacking stuff. It's like layers of soil, right? What tool do I have? Stack this on top of this, on top of this. Hey, it's awesome. Sky's the limit.
Oh man, such good stuff. Well, Hugh, we got to wrap things up. We'll be sure to put the links in the show notes, hughcarnahan.com. And then hopefully if you had the podcast links out there as well, we'll include the podcast for Small Biz Rescue and FU Money. Awesome, Hugh. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Well, with that, it's been Hugh Carnahan and Dr. Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.